This is On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross, a weekly recap of your Philadelphia Flyers from blue line to blue line. Broadcasting live from Chickies and Pete's, tonight's show is brought to you by Han and Stone Spa, Pat Dion Beverages, The Capitol Grill, Chickies and Pete's, Payroll Service Solutions, and Independence Blue Cross. We now go live to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz.
And welcome to Chickies and Pete's here on Roosevelt Boulevard in the great Northeast. This is the Independence Blue Cross On the Ice with myself, Brad Marsh, Bernie Perrant, Keith Primo. All my co-hosts are busy this week, Brad and Bernie, at the All-Star Game, so it's our guest and me, but we both talk a lot. We're ready to get you going for the next hour. My guest is the television play-by-play voice for the Philadelphia Flyers for the last 29, 30 years. He's terrific. He was with the Phillies, now just with the Flyers. Welcome the one and only Mr. Jim Jackson. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, Paul. Great to be here. And this is just basically like transplanting us back about 7 or 8 years at Citizens Bank Park, the press box, and we just talked for well over an hour. So
game discussion.
We'll just do it again.
Can we hold up an hour?
I think we can. We'll probably need 3 or 4, but the show will end after an hour.
There we are. All right. Yeah. I read about preparing for the show. Obviously, it's been in the news this week, not Flyers related, but NHL related. Gary Bettman, 30 years. Yeah. Your career has paralleled his, huh?
Yeah, he took over. The anniversary is today, in fact, 30 years ago today. And I started with the Flyers in August of that year. So basically, I've been there since he's been here. And I've had my quibbles with the commissioner over the years, the 3 lockouts in particular, because especially one of them I wasn't even paid during, and a whole year of basically going out and trying to find ways to make money. And I think he used work stoppages as a bargaining tool, which is fine, I guess, but you're playing with people's lives, like mine in that case, and others. So I didn't like that. But everything else that he has done, and he hasn't had a work stoppage now in almost a decade, so he's gotten away from that. He's had good negotiations the last couple of times with the Players Association. He has really, really grown the league. So he's done a great job. And, he's 70 years old. You look at him, you don't think he's 70. But I don't think he's close to retiring either. He seems to still have a lot of energy. And I really like the way he has stood up for only 16 teams in the playoffs, with the NBA now going to the play-in. Well, no, it used to be 16 out of 21 in the NHL, right? Now it's 16 out of 32. Yep. It's the top half of the league. I like that. And you see the NBA now caving and going to these play-ins. You see baseball. It's such now, to me, the regular season has been really minimized in baseball, and football's added teams. The NHL suddenly now maybe the toughest, and I like the fact that he sticks to his guns on that. He also sticks to his guns on trying to keep teams where they are. Some people don't like that because they're still in Arizona, even though they've had all these problems, and they're still in Ottawa, and they're still in all these markets. But I think that's good. I think it's good to try to keep your teams in the same market, and I just think he's done a really good job. And obviously, the biggest part of his legacy is going to be the TV contracts and how he's just grown the business of the league through sponsorships and the business side.
Which is what anybody cares about, is money. If I was a commissioner of the NHL, which I will never be, obviously, I would have 8 teams in the playoffs, plenty for me, but I understand it's about money. Like you said, people's lives get in the way sometimes. He was with the NBA and David Stern before that. He's done a pretty good job. In your 30 years, Jim Jackson, the parallel Gary Bettman's, you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly several times around with the Flyers. This was thought of as the ugly at the beginning of the season with John Tortorella taking over a team with limited talent. I think this has been a pleasant surprise for many Philadelphia Flyer fans and people around the NHL. 21-9, flat at 500. Our stat of the week, which we'll talk about later on, 10-4-2 in their last 16. Young players coming out of nowhere, playing very well. It looks like the future looks bright if Chuck Fletcher can assemble some talent at the deadline, maybe getting some guys to go into other teams through the draft. This rebuild is happening faster than we thought, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, the thing is, we judged all of the current players moving forward based upon how they played last year.
Sure.
And that was unfair because last year was a terrible year, not only because of injuries, which was a big part of it, but also because of just poor performance and the coaching change and COVID hit and all these things. So we went into the year thinking that Travis Konechny was the Travis Konechny from last year. And I can go right down the list of players and the young guys as well who we didn't anticipate maybe growing. And what's happened is Travis Konechny's been much better than last year. And certainly the young players are growing. I mean, when you look at Owen Tippett, you look at Noah Cates, you look at Morgan Frost, you look at Cam York, you look at these guys.
Let me give you that one specifically, because Cam York, I can speak personally, obviously for myself. I thought Tortorella was crazy not bringing him up to start the season. Said he needed some seasoning in the minor leagues. That's why Tortorella's the head coach in the NHL and I'm a broadcaster, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted him with the team to start the year, but he didn't deserve it. He had a camp that was not good, and he didn't look involved, engaged. He just didn't look right, and obviously he looks very right now. Since he was called up is pretty much when they've gone on the run you were talking about, and he's really helped the team, giving them another puck mover, another guy that can get the puck out of their zone, transition them up the ice, and he can play, on the power play, on the penalty kill. He can do whatever you want. So, and left side, right side. So he's been very valuable to this team, and yeah, I mean, he's only 22, Jolly, for a defenseman. Yep. That's really young.
Very young.
He's just, I think we're just the old cliche, scratching the surface with this guy. So he's a bright light. They also have a whole bunch of people on the way. Cutter Gauthier is the guy most people talk about, but Tyson Forster, do not forget about him. He's beginning to really mature. He too, just 21. We judge these guys when they're 19.
How about a guy that's on the way that's already here, Sam Erson?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, just so you know, because we found this out the hard way too, it's Erson. He wants it to be pronounced Erson. Okay. But he's a guy who was one of those people that we'd seen pockets in his career where he was flat out off the charts good, and then he'd have injuries or he'd have other issues. He's obviously shown that they have some more goaltender depth in the organization than they realized. And it's good to have two good young goaltenders with Carter Hart, who's still young, and him. So, and Felix Sandstrom hasn't really gotten a fair shake. He's had to play back-to-back games where the team's playing on the second half back-to-backs. Almost all of his games. One of the times he didn't, he won. Go figure. So I wouldn't give up on him either. So it's really three pretty solid young goaltenders. They also have a Russian goaltender who's really been lights out this year. So there's suddenly all kinds of depth that we're seeing defensively. There's still Zamula, still Ronnie Addard, and there's still Emil Andre. They just signed a kid, Sampson, who's they're going to get a good look at. Really, really blossoming. Might be one of those guys you get late in the draft that develops into a real stud. And then up front, as I was mentioning, Gauthier and Forster, along with guys like Lixell and Denoyer, I've named about 10 prospects.
But I think it's fair, JJ, the fan base and everybody associated with the Flyers, they're saying that's great, well and good. Tippett's playing great. Obviously, Scott Lawton a little bit older, but you can mention 10 young guys. What the Flyers really need to take that huge next step, if they're going to do that, is that offensive stud. Konechny could be that. Who knows? How hard is it to get one of those? Obviously, you're not going to tank. One of the things I thought you were going to talk about when you talked about with Bettman is he's made it difficult to tank.
Very difficult.
The best team in the NHL, the worst team in the NHL, rather, only has a 19% chance.
Tanking is that. I mean, I'll sit here. We could talk the whole hour on how tanking is not the way to go. I know there's a lot of fans out there who say, "Oh, every win is a bad thing for the Flyers." Well, if they finish just out of the playoffs, they're what? You probably know the exact. I think it's 2%. So they're really 1%. Only 17% less, or whatever, 16% less than the team that finishes bottom. Yep. It's not worth it. Second of all, although Connor Bedard looks for sure like the real thing.
You talking about the Michigan kid?
More so the Michigan kid. More so than most guys. Connor Bedard is maybe a sure thing, but I know that a year before he was drafted, Nolan Patrick was getting that kind of talk. And a year before he got drafted, Shane Wright was getting that kind of. And now they don't get that same, obviously.
Well, look at the fourth pick in 2017 when Nolan Patrick was drafted second. A kid named Cale Makar, who's only probably the best defenseman in the history of the NHL, not named Orr. So you never know, right?
You just don't. So tanking, to me, is not worth it. And they had an almost untankable roster anyhow because they have some guys – okay, let's get rid of all the contracts. Well, you can't get rid of a couple of their contracts. There's no moves, and there are contracts that, quite frankly, are going to be hard to trade unless you're eating some of the contract, which kind of defeats the purpose. So really where we're at with this team is they're hoping that the young players are going to develop. Owen Tippett could be one of those
Could be.
offensive go-to guys.
Sure.
I'm telling you, he has. I talked to scouts. This isn't my opinion. I talked to scouts. I talked to ex-players who are broadcasters, people who played the game, and he has every bit the potential to be a 30 to 40 goal scorer consistently.
And they got him in a trade last year.
Right, and got a first-round pick with him for 1 month or 2 months or whatever of Claude Giroux. So that's turning into a very good trade because Giroux obviously moved on to Ottawa, and he's playing great again. But for Florida, they got 2 months of Claude Giroux for a first-round pick and Owen Tippett. So, that's turning out to do a good trade. Joel Farabee's a guy, I don't want to judge him too much this year because he had that surgery, but he's another young player. So they have all these players. We don't know. Joel Farabee could develop into a top 6 forward, a top 3. He could be a top-line guy. Owen Tippett has a potential. Travis Konecny showing he is a top-line player. So do they have Connor McDavid? No. Only one team has Connor McDavid, and that same team has Leon Draisaitl. There's only about 5 or 6 game breakers in this game. Now, one of them, I'll be forthright, and this is a guy they could have gotten in the offseason, is Johnny Gaudreau. He's an offensive
I'm glad
stud.
they didn't get him, JJ.
Well, I know a lot of people
I
are.
didn't think it
I
made
mean,
sense.
I always, whenever I talk about this subject, Jolly, I do the disclaimer right off the top. My son skated with him in the summer. He went to the same high school as my son.
Great kid. He lives
Or
in Avalon,
My
right
son
near where
went
we
to the
live.
same high school as him, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And I know the family. His father coached my son.
Played
So
with Kevin Hayes in
This is
college.
not, yeah, absolutely, won a championship. I'm not unbiased here is what I'm saying. I wanted Claude Giroux. I wanted Johnny Gaudreau. The moment they traded Claude Giroux, I thought, it's open now. You've got a skill opening, perfect Johnny Gaudreau offseason, and that's why I thought they were going to make the move in the offseason. As it turns out, they couldn't do it because teams were asking for a lot to unload some of the longer-term contracts that they were willing to unload, like 2 first-round picks. You just can't give up that much. So they ended up not being able to do it. I think the mistake might have been that the message was originally sent out was we were never in the hunt, and that made the fans think that the Flyers didn't even look into it. They looked into it. It just wasn't doable. But if you put Johnny Gaudreau on this team and Sean Couturier comes back, who, by the way, is very much a top-line player in this league, not a 50-goal scorer, but a 30-goal scorer who can shut down a 50-goal scorer.
Winner, yeah.
He's more important, to be honest, than a one-way offensive player. He's not quite Patrice Bergeron, but he's that ilk player. You add that to this mix, and then next year throw Cam Atkinson in, hoping he's back to health. And then perhaps Cutter Gauthier or maybe Tyson Forster, one of these other youngsters comes in. All of a sudden, they've got pretty good depth up front. The defense core is pretty deep as it is. And the goaltending situation we've already talked about. It's quite conceivable this team is in the playoffs next year. They're not out of it this year.
Nope.
I mean, it's going to take a major run and
Do you want to make
some
it?
collapses. I do, because I don't really think – I mean, to me, it's like go for it. If you don't get in, okay, your fallback is you have a chance, might be a very small chance, but a chance to get Connor Bedard. And if not him, this draft is really deep. So there's some really good players.
Let me ask you an honest question about this draft. Flyers, by the way, going to the All-Star break, play next Monday against the Islanders. Kevin Hayes and Johnny Gaudreau probably play together this weekend. I'm an amateur scout like every sports fan on the planet Earth is in every sport. I've seen Connor Bedard play a lot. A friend of mine's son has played in leagues with him, juniors. To me, Connor Bedard's a wonderful player. Maybe a generational player, clearly the first pick in this draft, but he's not Connor McDavid. He doesn't skate like Connor McDavid. Nobody else does either. If you could, for people, put Connor Bedard at a level, obviously Gretzky's in his own stratosphere, but Connor McDavid's the other person at the point of reference. Where does Connor Bedard fit if Flyers do get lucky and wind up with him?
Well, from what I've seen, and you've probably seen more of them than I have, I've watched some of his games. He does not have McDavid's legs. He has everything else.
He's incredible in anticipation.
Maybe even better hands than Connor McDavid. So he does have the potential, but he's not a big guy.
Nope.
And people forget that about McDavid. He's not huge, but he's 6'1" and pretty solidly built. You watch him; it's all about his speed. I get that, but you can't get him off the puck.
No,
either.
he's strong.
So Connor's Bedard is gonna have to work at that, and he's gonna have to get strong and all that. But every scout I talk to, and I know I have my scouts who I know talk people up. I have my scouts who usually talk people down. I can't find anybody to talk him down. They all say he's not going to be just a good NHL player. He's going to be a great NHL player. players. So whichever team gets him absolutely gets a great player. But Connor McDavid may be the second best player to ever play the game.
Yep.
And his team hasn't been to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he's in his 8th year.
And he's got Draisaitl.
Yeah. So it goes to show you what tanking
sport.
and all, it is too much a team sport.
Yep.
And also you got to have that, and I think Connor McDavid just got this last year, that what basically Sidney Crosby had from the time he put his first skate on an NHL ice surface, that will, that drive. I never saw that with Connor. He was great getting his points and all that. But last year, I think the loss to Winnipeg the year before in the playoffs
The criticism
really hit
coming.
him. Yep. And last year I saw it, and I said, if he ever gets that, look out. He's got it. So that Edmonton team could be really, really, on par for a 3, 4, 5 year run of dominance. We'll see. They still don't have certainty in goal. They certainly don't have certainty on the blue line. But the bottom line is, he's exactly to the day. They're born on the same day, Ivan Provorov's age. And we know how long Provy's been with the Flyers. That's how long McDavid's been with the Oilers, and then some, and they still haven't even made it to the finals. So getting one player, getting Connor Bedard, is not going to guarantee you contention. It's not going to guarantee you even getting to the finals. It's not going to guarantee you for a couple of years in the Oilers situation even making the playoffs.
Look at Connor McDavid's career if you're interested in Connor Bedard and what he can bring to it. Jim Jackson brings a lot to the table here. By the way, Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, learned a few minutes ago, only 5 points apart in their NHL career. Crosby 5 points more than Ovechkin. Amazing. When we come back, I'm going to ask JJ a 2-word question. It's not a question. He'll understand it. You will too. When we come back, this is the Independence Blue Cross on the Ice. You're listening, presented by Independence Blue Cross, as I said, live from Chickies and Pete's right here on the Boulevard, right here at 1490 WBCB. It's time now for the Independence Blue Cross Live Fearless Player of the Week. Flyers played one game leading into the break. Carter Hart, a 40-save shutout against the Jets in Winnipeg, is our Player of the Week. Remember to choose Independence Blue Cross today and begin to live fearless. We'll live fearless with Jim Jackson on the way back on the ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Right after this. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Pete from Chickie and Pete's. It's all new and it's all for you. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open. It's enclosed, heated, and perfect for the ultimate in-game experience or live music when the best local bands take the stage. Like LeComp, Fat Mez, or Jameson. Check our website for the band schedule. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open every Thursday through Sunday. Chickies and Pete's.
At Independence Blue Cross, we believe in giving you the tools you need to pursue your healthiest life. From premiums as low as $0 per month to health discounts and cash rewards, it pays to have coverage with Independence. With the strongest network of doctors and hospitals in the region and free 24/7 virtual doctor visits, you can feel confident that quality care is always within reach. Explore your coverage options and enroll today at ibx.com.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs, therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
A flawless occasion begins at the Capitol Grill. From the moment you step into the Capitol Grill, located in the heart of Center City, the experience is one of comfortable elegance. Whether you're looking to host a private affair, a perfect lunch stop, or dinner destination, start your occasion at the Capitol Grill today. Visit thecapitolgrill.com or call 215-545-9588. That's 215-545-9588 for the Capitol Grill, Center City.
If you're looking for a stylish and sophisticated fine dining experience, visit your Eddie V's Prime Seafood restaurant near King of Prussia. Eddie V's Seafood features an abundant selection of fine wines and curated cocktails to complement exquisite steaks and seafood made from the highest quality ingredients. In the V Lounge, sip on imaginative handcrafted cocktails with attitude while enjoying signature appetizers. Conveniently located between I-276 and I-76 near the King of Prussia Mall. Call them today, 610-337-7823 to schedule your night out for Eddie V's Prime Seafood.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz.
All right, everybody, back to Chickies and Pete's on the Boulevard. Time now for a Smart Stat of the Week, brought to you by Payroll Service Solutions, where Danny is here today to make sure I do this correctly. Call them today at 1-866-PAY-EASY. That's 1-866-PAY-EASY. The Flyers rolled into the All-Star break on a 10-4-2 roll, now at 500 for the season at 21-21-9. A lot of people thought it would be much worse. John Tortorella's first year has people optimistic all of a sudden. That was your Flyers Smart Stat of the Week. Once again, brought to you by Payroll Service Solutions. Call them today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for the smart choice in payroll services. Payroll Service Solutions, catering to the small and medium-sized business to handle all of your payroll needs. Call them once again at 1-866-PAY-EASY. We're here with Jim Jackson. Speaking of Pay Easy, one of the guys that was paid easy and in line to be paid easy retired today. With the question that
He's still going to get paid easy.
He'll get paid. Well, he's been paid by
As a
Fox. And in
broadcaster,
case you don't know who we're talking about, I'm not even going to mention the name. You obviously automatically know who we're talking about. But the question I have to you, JJ, social media, radio, TV today, it's been bandied about. There's no right answer to this question. There's no wrong answer. There's only your answer. Best career, whatever your metric is, best career of A. Wayne Gretzky, B. Michael Jordan, C. Tom Brady.
So you didn't give me any notice on this. So
Nope.
that encompasses a lot of things.
And no slugs either, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough to top what Brady's done. Babe Ruth is certainly up there because Babe Ruth had more home runs than teams had. And Wayne Gretzky, in his 200-point season, was in that boat
He
in
leads
his
the
whole
career
career.
scoring by 1,000
Yeah,
points.
he has more assists than anybody else has
Yep.
points. So he's close. But, you know, a lot of people, and I know you're like this, judge people on not only their individual numbers, but on team accomplishments.
Number one.
And Brady right there takes the cake. So to see what he did, not that he needed to validate himself, but what he did when he went to Tampa without Belichick, boom, they win the Super Bowl. I mean, that was, I think, the final nail in the coffin for me to say that he has had the best career of anyone in the team sports.
All right, my favorite player in the history of sports, my favorite athlete ever is Wayne Gretzky, but I never go by my favorites. I would say Michael Jordan. It's the kind of question where if
Jordan's
you don't,
comparable because he won a ton of championships.
6
as well.
championships, never
Yep.
lost one. It's one of those things where if you want to take A, I'll take B or C very gladly. Obviously, all the GOATs in their respective sports. With here with Jim Jackson. JJ, the All-Star break this weekend, you get to take a breath. No longer with the Phillies anymore. We'll talk about that down the line. But the All-Star break in Sunrise, Florida, skills competitions. It's not a hockey game, the actual hockey game. It's a joke. But Flyers don't play till Monday, February 6th. And after that, play a bunch of games. And then a little thing called the trade deadline.
Yeah.
The Flyers
March
have some
3rd.
players. I don't think they're going to be buyers. They're not silly enough to think they have a shot at the Stanley Cup, other than a miracle, which everybody has a chance. But you hear Ivan Provorov. He had his problems off the ice, but also on the ice. Their thoughts about that. Kevin Hayes, James Van Riemsdyk. Where do you think Chuck Fletcher goes, and what should be a right market around the trade deadline?
Well, I think he's going to look to perhaps move contracts that should be moved. James Van Riemsdyk, who, by the way, John Tortorella really likes, not just as a net front presence player, his
leader.
all-around game. Yeah, and he is a guy who, when you saw when Frost and Tippett went on his line, he mentored them really well and just top-notch person. So I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't get traded, don't get me wrong. But he is at the end of his contract, unrestricted free agent at the
I'll
end of
be
the
shocked if
year.
he doesn't get traded because Chuck knows he can bring in some talent.
Yeah.
You got to give to get. You got to get to give.
And again, you have to know what the market is. I mean, if they're going to get a third-round pick for James Van Riemsdyk, they may not move him.
Maybe not.
You know, if they're going to get a second-round pick or something better, maybe a player of some sort, then, you know, again, it's what the market bears. I'll say this, Jolly. They have 4 games right out of the All-Star break. If they win all 4, which is asking a lot, one of them's against the Islanders, too, they're going to suddenly be more than just on the outside of the playoff picture. They're going to be right in the middle
Single
of it.
digits now.
Yeah. They then have a long road trip to Western Canada and Seattle. That'll be a challenge. You play Calgary, you play Edmonton. But, if they hang through that stretch, then you're about a week to 10 days before the trade deadline. I think we're going to know if they have any chance at the playoffs. If they have no chance at the playoffs, it's going to, I think, affect a little bit what they do. But the Provorov situation, that's a trade that can be made in the summer because his contract still has 2 more years on it. The Van Riemsdyk is the one that would come to mind right away, or any of the expiring contracts.
Hayes.
But, yeah, I mean, Hayes is not an expiring contract.
No, but it's a long one.
And he's one that, again, Kevin Hayes is really interesting.
Tortorella
He is
not
easily
a huge fan
having
of
the
his,
best offensive season of his career. It's
He
not
is,
even close.
But the coach is not a big fan of his, and it's pretty
Right.
clear.
He's not a big fan of his defensive work. He
Correct.
loves him as a
Correct.
person.
Yep.
And I want to get this out there. There is no problem between the two guys. I talk to him all the time. Kevin Hayes takes the criticism. Obviously, no one likes to get criticized. It's not like he's going to say, yes, he's absolutely right. But he has taken the criticism to heart. He is trying to get better defensively. He's moved to a new position, not sulked, and continued to produce. Gets his first hat trick.
Let me stop you right there, JJ, for a second, because obviously you have the personal dynamic. It's hard to become better at something you spent your whole life doing as a professional, 30 years old and plus.
No doubt.
But the bigger
and Torts
question,
has said that.
and absolutely, John Tortorella. A lot of people ask me, is this tyrant who
No,
breathes fire
no.
in press conferences after games,
does.
yells at people?
He does it in the press conferences, yes.
Sure. Is he that kind of guy?
No.
I haven't talked to one person anywhere. I'm talking about people back from Columbus, the Islanders, currently, whatever, not as many as you have, but a bunch. Nobody doesn't like John Tortorella. Nobody wouldn't jump through a glass hoop for him. How does John Tortorella balance that maniacal personality with a heart that everybody seems to love?
The only time I see him maniacal, and that was your word, not mine, is the press conferences.
Yeah.
And usually the post-game press
Yep.
conferences. Occasionally he's ornery around other ones too, but to talk to John Tortorella, it's almost like it was with Hitch, although in this case it seems even more genuine because he played the media like a piano, and he was a maestro. He really was.
Yep.
Just playing any instrument. He played the media and he used it to coach the team. John doesn't necessarily do that. He talks to the players before he talks to the media when he was criticizing them. Sometimes he might go to the media where they ask him a specific question, but John will always be willing to talk to the player on that. You see him away from press conferences, and he is this caring guy. And also, he can criticize the players, but nobody else better.
Yeah.
When
It's like your
writers
brother.
begin criticizing, that's when Larry Brooks said he got into it in New York.
Sure, it's like criticizing your brother, saying, I can criticize him, but don't you ever say a word
Exactly
about
right.
it.
Exactly
Yep.
right. So, and he has his players' backs that way all the time. So that earns him respect with the players. But there's countless examples. Zach Werenski is a kid for the Columbus Blue Jackets, one of the better offensive defensemen in the league. Unfortunately, hurt right now out for the year. But he came up as a guy who was a defensive liability, and he and Torts sparred, similar to what D'Angelo and Torts are doing now, if you call that sparring. But I mean, he was out of the lineup a couple times. He got sat during games, that kind of thing. And I talked to Zach. Unfortunately, it was the day he got hurt against the Flyers. It was pregame, and Tim Saunders and I were talking to him about Torts, and he said it was tough. There were days I went home, cussing that guy out. He said, but now that I look at it, he was the best thing that happened in my career. He's the reason I'm a better two-way defenseman now. I'm not going through those lows of getting scratched or getting sat. Coach has more trust in me when we're up a goal now. And I get that. Scotty Hartnell was scratched by John Tortorella. He loves the guy. So, I mean, you're right. You can go throughout. There are guys, Brandon Dubisky, there's a couple other guys who didn't like him post John Tortorella.
That's going to happen with any coach.
No
who
doubt.
coach any length of
Especially a
time.
guy who coaches the way he does.
Yeah.
Because he does use ice time and in terms of scratching and sitting players, as we've already seen.
In game, not just
No
scratching
doubt.
them.
No doubt. And in game's embarrassing. I mean,
Yeah.
when Tyrus Konechny and Kevin Hayes sat the whole third period against San Jose at home, that's so embarrassing
Yep.
for both those guys. And
But
Konechny took
motivating
off
at the
out
same
of that.
time, yeah.
Hayes has had one other game where he sat out a third period and then was a scratch for an entire game. But and I'm not telling you that Hayes goes home and tells all his buddies he loves Torts. Nobody would like to get that treatment, I don't think. But as the year's going along, I'm beginning to sense it's sinking in. And So when we talk about moving Kevin Hayes, first of all, he has some no move to his contract. He has some decisions he can make to limit his mobility. Secondly, it's a high price contract for long term, so it's not going to be easy to move anyhow. It would probably take a buyout to move him, to be honest with you, and buyouts last years and years into the future. So I just don't. I think they're going to find a way to make that work unless he agrees to a move somewhere.
I don't think a coach can be your friend. He has to have that hammer he holds over your head, and Tortorella clearly does it. Knows when to pound it. Knows when to pull back. I have a question for you, Jonesy, Jimmy. Before we go to the break,
I take offense to that. You could call me Coatsy. You could call me Timmy. You could call me. Bush.
What
you
I
could
just
call
did
me
was
Preems.
I gave my
you
question
called me
away.
Jonesy. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Well, here's the question. 2 words. Keith Jones. Nothing else needed.
Legend. Because that's what he calls everybody else. No, I mean, working with him is just, I mean, hey, I've told you this many times, been blessed to work with awesome partners. I mean, it started with Coatsy on radio. Then I move over to TV and I'm working with Gary Dornhofer, who was the national guy for CBC. I mean, he's one of the best in the business.
Yep.
And he took the young broadcaster and let me make my mistakes and was awesome. And then Jonesy comes in. And when Jonesy couldn't do the games, I get to work with Bill Clement. And when Bill Clement couldn't do the games now, it's Brian Boucher, who I think is outstanding.
Awesome.
And Scott Hartnell. And I even got Al Morganti this year, and he did a great job. And it was so much fun working with Al. So, I mean, all these guys, great guys, fun to work with, very good at what they do. So I've been blessed. Jonesy, obviously, we're working on now 15 or 16 years now together. It's great because he's hilarious. I mean, the guy has a sense of humor.
But he knows when to push that button, and he knows when to push the serious button. I've worked with WIP for a long time.
No doubt.
He has an innate knack. Some people know who to throw to on the floor. Gretzky had eyes in the back of his head. Jonesy has broadcasting eyes in the back of his head, doesn't he?
He does. And we have discussions about this off the air because in today's society, you don't get a second chance if you make a mistake in that realm, if you're being funny and offend somebody. So you have to be so much more careful now than you had to be even 5 years ago, but certainly 10 years ago. And so what he does, his genre on where you worked as well as on the air with us and even nationally, because they have a lot of fun at TNT now, is that you have to know where that line is. And he's kind of a guy I know where that line is when I'm working with him. So I don't have to worry too much about that. He's going to rein me in if I'm going overboard, and I don't even have to worry about reining him in because he knows where that is, like you said. So, and he's got the wit. I mean, he's so quick. Some of his puns are rather sad, but because they're so sad, they're funny. So it's great. I love him. I know in the promo Facebook that was put out, it was me and him, and I told everybody in my tweet that he'd be here in spirit. So he's here in spirit.
He is certainly here in spirit. We're here in reality with Jim Jackson, the tremendous play-by-play voice, television voice of the Philadelphia Flyers. By the way, enjoying his Italian wedding soup.
Outstanding soup.
I love the Italian wedding soup here at Chickies and Pete's.
Very
It's
good.
the absolute best. We'll be back with Independence Blue Cross on the ice in a minute. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Pete from Chickie and Pete's. It's all new and it's all for you. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open. It's enclosed, heated, and perfect for the ultimate in-game experience or live music when the best local bands take the stage. Like LeComp, Fat Mez, or Jameson. Check our website for the band schedule. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open every Thursday through Sunday. Chickies and Pete's.
I'm always striving to live my healthiest life, so I need a health plan that has my back. With Independence Blue Cross, I get access to the largest network of doctors and hospitals in the region and free virtual doctor visits 24/7. Plus, with premiums as low as $0 per month, I can stay on top of my health and keep my budget in check. Independence has given me coverage I can count on, and they'll do the same for you. Explore your coverage options and enroll today at ibx.com.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
A flawless occasion begins at the Capitol Grill. From the moment you step into the Capitol Grill, located in the heart of Center City, the experience is one of comfortable elegance. Whether you're looking to host a private affair, a perfect lunch stop, or dinner destination, start your occasion at the Capitol Grill today. Visit thecapitolgrill.com or call 215-545-9588. That's 215-545-9588 for the Capitol Grill, Center City.
If you're looking for a stylish and sophisticated fine dining experience, visit your Eddie V's Prime Seafood restaurant near King of Prussia. Eddie V's Seafood features an abundant selection of fine wines and curated cocktails to complement exquisite steaks and seafood made from the highest quality ingredients. In the V Lounge, sip on imaginative handcrafted cocktails with attitude while enjoying signature appetizers. Conveniently located between I-276 and I-76 near the King of Prussia Mall. Call them today, 610-337-7823 to schedule your night out for Eddie V's Prime Seafood.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz.
All right, we have a man for all seasons here, Mr. Jim Jackson, as our guest today. Chris Ermer, our producer, doing a fine job. Stephen Lawler back at the station. Independence Blue Cross, thank you for sponsoring On the Ice. Payroll Service Solutions, all the sponsors are here. There are going to be more of them, though, JJ, out in Phoenix next week at a little game called the Super Bowl. By the way,
yes.
The Waste Management Open in Phoenix also next weekend. If you're going out there, prepare to spend most of what you've earned in your lifetime. One team that will not be going out there is Jim Jackson's New York Giants, who had a hell of a year this year, let's be honest. They fell short. They're not as good a team as the Eagles.
They're not my Giants either. They're just a team that I root for.
Well, you don't own them, but
Yeah.
How do you feel as a Giant fan that they came this year, and what do you see in the Eagles?
Well, I mean, the Giants, anything they got really in the postseason was gravy. So to win a playoff game was a lot of gravy. If they had somehow beaten the Eagles, it would have been more than gravy. But I would have preferred it be a competitive game, which it was not.
No.
Which to me showed that a couple things. The Giants weren't quite ready. Their offensive coordinator.
Not ready for prime time.
Offensive coordinator went with a game plan which just befuddled me because you have to run. The only way the Chiefs, in fact, are going to beat the Eagles is if Pacheco or one of those guys has a big game. You have to run on the Eagles first in order to have any success. That pass rush is going to eat anybody up if they know you're passing. So, and they got 14-0 in the Giants game, and they just abandoned the run, which we remember those days with the Eagles, right?
But they deferred the kickoff to start with. Gave the Eagles a game.
You have a thing. Everybody does it now.
It's the wrong thing.
Is it 16 straight Super Bowls? I think it's been the case, or something.
20
like that.
straight championship games. Eagles have done it every time this year. I'm just asking. Take a look at your situation. Who you are, who they are.
Yeah.
Whatever.
My whole feeling of the Eagles is that they are the best team in the NFL. Obviously, they could still lose the game. They could still lose the game.
Are they better than the 17 team? I think they are.
I would say so. I mean, it's so hard to judge that team because they lost Wentz and it changed the team so much. But this team, I know Hurts missed a game or two, but he's back, so there's a big difference there. And I would take Hurts over Wentz. Even if Wentz had stayed healthy, I take this team. The offensive lines were really good, both of them. This team's defensive line I take over this team's secondary. I definitely take over that team. So, yeah, I would say this team. I like Peterson as a coach better than their current coach. I'm not a huge fan of his, mainly because I don't like his antics. I don't like his antics.
Well,
press conferences are fine.
I mean, his antics, if you're talking about the faces he makes during the games, I don't care about that
he acts
stuff.
like a player. He's a coach. Act like
it's
a coach.
It's his second year.
But the bottom line is he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. He's done a great job that way. But Doug Peterson's a ridiculously good coach. He got that Jacksonville team into the playoffs.
It's interesting you say that.
But let me say this.
Right.
Let me finish the thought on the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the best team. I don't think they've gotten the best team respect all year long, though, from the national media. There was always like a reason why they were having the best record ever. Then when they lost one game to the Cowboys and then they lost another one. One of the Saints started to worry me a little bit because they really looked bad in that game. They still were without Hurts, but the rest of the team didn't seem to play that well. But you know what it's about. And it's been this way for the Eagles through the last Super Bowl championship team. They're good on the line of scrimmage. They're great on the line of scrimmage.
It's Andy Reid football.
Yeah, and that is
football.
Yeah. Ironically, that's who they get to play. But the only way they lose this game is if, as I said, Kansas City gets their ground attack going, and then that might open up some things for Mahomes. And Mahomes is a magic man. He doesn't necessarily need to be the better team or have his team be the better team for the entire game. I mean, the Bengals to me were the better team last week, but Kansas City won. So
well, they made a little mistake near the end of the game.
Big mistake.
One mistake can cost a football game. I'm going to correlate this back to the Flyers, JJ.
There were others, but we'll get into it.
There are others. I mean, games aren't.
You tell I might have had
play.
some schlockers on the Bengals in that game.
Could. Then there will be on the Super Bowl. Eagles 1.5 right now.
No, it's down, right? Didn't it start at 2.5?
It started the Chiefs a point favorite. Then it went
did?
all the way to the Eagles.
I saw it. The first thing I saw the day of the championship games that night was 2.5 Eagles.
It opened at Kansas City 1. This the minute you were allowed into the sports book. For the big bettors, it's called an outlaw line in Vegas.
Yeah.
Immediately went to 2.5. It's down now to 1.5.
Okay.
But what that is and what lines are and what your job is and our jobs all are in betting sports or the athletes, JJ, the longest word in the English language is expectations. We've seen the Flyers
it is? Really?
exceed...
It's the longest word?
Longer than supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I don't think
longer
so.
than anti-disestablishmentarianism. Because they create the public bar for wherever you need to be. How do you feel about John Tortorella exceeding expectations, maybe the public refocusing itself on what the Flyers should be? The coach of the year in the NFL, where this is headed, you talk about Nick Sirianni. You think Harry Roseman gave him a great team? A monkey could coach that team. That's not true.
I wouldn't say that, but he has
But Doug Peterson...
a much better roster than a lot of these coaches.
No, but Dable and Peterson took teams that were supposed to be terrible to the playoffs, exceeded expectations. Nick Sirianni took a team that was supposed to be good to 14 wins plus 2 playoff wins. How do you feel about Coach of the Year? And it seems to be based on exceeding expectations more than what you actually
John
do.
Cooper's never been the Coach of the Year in the NHL, and he
Phil
might
Jackson
be the best coach
it's terrific
in the
coach.
league. I mean, you see what that team does,
Yep.
retooling all the time. They're never the same club. They
3 times
lose
in the finals.
key players every year. They just come right back. The Coach of the Year is more like most improved team of the year. Yeah, that's really what it goes down to. I think Sirianni should have been one of the nominees. I do think that Dable did. That team wasn't supposed to be just bad. That team, they gutted that team, and they made the playoffs.
Well, they didn't gut it.
They certainly did.
To gut a team, you have to change the quarterback, and they didn't do that.
Well, no, but they gutted. They got rid of Bradbury. They got rid of so many players that were They just let them go.
Well, we're glad they got Bradbury
and
to the Eagles. Sure.
Didn't even when at the deadline when they were in it, didn't go out and help and get a receiver or anything. They just went with these guys off the practice squad. So it's either Daniel Jones carried that team or Saquon Barkley carried that team or, well, obviously it's more than 2 players. Brian Dable did a great job.
By the way,
but
the guy that you
having
gave
said
to
that, Peterson, that team was dead in the water in the middle of the season when he took them. So I can see why they're getting more play. And I do think that an average coach, this Eagles team would still be very good. They might not be 14-3, but they would have been 12-5. This is a great team. I'm telling you. I said in the beginning of the year, fans, they're always leery around here. We're always leery in Philly. I said, this is really a good team. I mean, they went out, and then they kept adding to it as the year went along, and it's like
Joseph and Sue.
Roseman also does deserve
incredible
a bulk of the credit, because how do you get that much talent and then continue to add during the season?
Under the cap.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I'm a huge Jalen Hurts fan. I've been since his first day at Alabama. I love this team. They have no discernible weaknesses. Doesn't mean they have the best player in the league at every position.
Punter.
Pretty damn good. Well, Aaron Simmons is hurt, and Brett Kern, whatever. But
that's about it. I mean, they are loaded. But again, one game. KC could beat them, but I like the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the best team. I think they should win the Super Bowl. Not that it always happens that way.
Let's hope they do. Phillies win the World Series. Sixers playing well. I'm not sure.
And that's the thing with the Flyers. We get right to it. It's a tough time to be the Flyers right now. They're trying to get back into contention when I think legitimately you could have 1980 all over again with the other 3 teams. I do think the Sixers are good enough to go to the finals this year. We'll see. Joel has to show me some things in the playoffs he hasn't shown me yet, but we'll see. But I think the Sixers certainly have a better, more well-rounded team now, whereas if Joel does not come up big in the playoffs, they can still win games, whereas I don't think they had that before. So I do think they are ready to go to the finals, so you could have 3 teams in the finals.
See, I disagree with you on one of your main points. 40 years ago, I was a freshman at Penn, All 4 teams made the finals. I think
1980.
this is a great
You're
time to
aging
be the
yourself.
Flyers. Yeah, because I think the Flyers can fly under the radar here. Sixers are going nowhere, not because of Joel, because they have a slug named James Harden who in the playoffs
Wow,
will spit the
they're
bit.
going nowhere?
Nowhere. Listen, you either win or you don't. I'm not one of
Oh,
those
I
people-
know you. We've
that's
disagreed on this for years.
James
but
Harden is not going to be remembered for how many times he got to the second round, how many times he
A
got to the
slug.
finals. Slug.
Wow.
He's a terrible playoff player. He's obviously a Hall of Famer. Without making this a James Harden, I just can't stand James Harden. But
I can tell, yes. I just think those teams, all 3 teams, could. Obviously,
could.
2 already have.
But
And
don't you think it's good for the Flyers to be under the radar and with the
I
expectations
guess,
not there?
but it's also you compare your, especially when it's the Sixers comparison. They're playing at the same time, same building. So from getting people out to the games and stuff, there's a competition there. Everybody loves to see both teams do well from a Philadelphia standpoint, but the teams themselves, if one team is really good and another team's 500, which is the case right now, ticket-wise, it's going to be tough on the team that's 500. But I guess you could say they're under the radar. The thing that's working for the Flyers is the exact opposite of what you're talking about with the Eagles in terms of expectations. There
Correct.
were so low expectations that 500 seems good. Last year, 500 wouldn't have seemed good. Going into the year, the thought was pretty high with the team.
But there are cities right now, JJ. If the Flyers were in Calgary, where they're the only game in town, the microscope would be on them. And
it would be. But they're still better than they were expected to be, so I don't think it would be too tough. It's when you start falling below the bar of expectations where things get really tough. And as John Tortorella said, this team could still very easily go into a fall here in the second half as teams tighten up and all that. But we'll see those 4 home games out of the break all in 1 week. Monday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Those 4 games will tell a lot for this team.
the beautiful new Wells Fargo Center. Fans will be down at those games. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll be back to talk to Jimmy about yet another Philadelphia team that he used to work for. They play baseball. They'll be in Clearwater this month. It's February, folks. We'll be back with the Independence Blue Cross on the ice from Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard. Great Italian wedding soup, great food, great TVs, great atmosphere. Come on down. We're back after this. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Pete from Chickie and Pete's. It's all new and it's all for you. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open. It's enclosed, heated, and perfect for the ultimate in-game experience or live music when the best local bands take the stage. Like LeComte, Fat Mez, or Jameson. Check our website for the band schedule. The heated deck at Chickie and Pete's on the Boulevard is now open every Thursday through Sunday. Chickies and Pete's.
At Independence Blue Cross, we believe in giving you the tools you need to pursue your healthiest life. From premiums as low as $0 per month to health discounts and cash rewards, it pays to have coverage with Independence. With the strongest network of doctors and hospitals in the region and free 24/7 virtual doctor visits, you can feel confident that quality care is always within reach. Explore your coverage options and enroll today at ibx.com.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs, therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
A flawless occasion begins at the Capitol Grill. From the moment you step into the Capitol Grill, located in the heart of Center City, the experience is one of comfortable elegance. Whether you're looking to host a private affair, a perfect lunch stop, or dinner destination, start your occasion at the Capitol Grill today. Visit thecapitolgrill.com or call 215-545-9588. That's 215-545-9588 for the Capitol Grill, Center City.
If you're looking for a stylish and sophisticated fine dining experience, visit your Eddie V's Prime Seafood restaurant near King of Prussia. Eddie V's Seafood features an abundant selection of fine wines and curated cocktails to complement exquisite steaks and seafood made from the highest quality ingredients. In the V Lounge, sip on imaginative handcrafted cocktails with attitude while enjoying signature appetizers. Conveniently located between I-276 and I-76 near the King of Prussia Mall. Call them today, 610-337-7823 to schedule your night out for Eddie V's Prime Seafood.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz.
And back here at Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard. Glad to be here. It's the All-Star break, so we throwing some curveballs at our guest Jim Jackson tonight. Been the play-by-play guy for the Flyers for 30 years. There we are.
Yeah.
Curveballs, kind of a hint as to where we're going. Your other team that you worked for a long time. Jim Jackson and I used to sit in the press box at Phillies games and then chat about whatever for whenever.
Some would say argue, but
some would say argue. It's sports. It is what it is. Some people would say that your summer vacation, Jim, with the overlap of the two sports, was called dinner. Now you have a few days. You used to work with the Phillies. You don't anymore.
Yeah.
Any Phillies that comes to mind, time's yours.
I used to basically treat the All-Star breaks as my off-season.
That was your vacation.
And my family, we'd cram some kind of vacation into 4 days. Now, I'm just telling you, I got 3 separate vacations set up for this summer. Yeah, I mean, the Phillies, full disclosures, everybody knows, moved on from me. And at the time, I was shocked, like, what am I going to do? But now, it was the best thing that could have happened. I've gotten into broadcast coaching, which I thoroughly enjoy. Very rewarding. Do some other things, too.
And you have a life.
And I get to go on 3 vacations in the summer.
Wife,
I get to
kids.
use my pool. I get to golf, all that kind of stuff. But for the Phillies, people were asking me, of course, this past year. They didn't ask me as much the year before that, but my second year out was this past summer. And do you miss it? Do you miss it? Because they were going on the run. And I said, if you could transport me into doing the pre and post for the run in September and the playoffs, I'd love it. But to do all 162 again, no, I just can't do that. But the Phillies, to me, are a team that is Paul Jolovitz made. They are, you talk about wanting to win it, right? They're going for the pump.
Dombrowski's all in.
They're going for the pump.
Yep.
They're going to pay for this in a big way. You understand that?
There's no other way in sports.
Yeah. Well, I heard about that with the last rendition about the Phillies, but I didn't hear that so much when they were struggling in 14, 15, 16, and 17. Now, they hung on to some players too long there.
Very much so.
They're not going to have an option with this team. The contracts they have put out there are they're basically great now and bad later.
They've
and they're
overdone
players
it,
who play hard, so they're going to get injured. So they're going to age. I'm not so sure they're going to age that well. But
I think they know they've overdone it, JJ, but Dombrowski's willing to say, I'm pushing on my
I'm not
chips
saying
in.
there's right or wrong here. I'm saying they're going for the pump. But they need to do it probably in the next 2 or 3 years because then your Harpers, your Turners, your Mutos, a whole bunch of them are really going to start to slide, and they're still going to have those contracts, and how they're going to manage. They're not going to go over the cap to finish third. They're go over the luxury tax. Sorry, but what they are is an example of the baseball system, which I think really isn't great.
It's a terrible system.
You've got 6-7 teams that have a chance, any kind of chance to win, and they're the teams that spend the most money.
All right, let's stop right there, JJ, because we all, everybody in this room, every sports fan I know, when salary caps came in, when the NFL came in, and obviously there's 3 sports that have it now, and 1 sport that has luxury tax, whatever, not a theoretical salary cap, everybody hated it. Everybody thought it was going to ruin sports, blah, blah, blah. Now that we're 20, 30 years in, kind of paralleling your career in play-by-play, what do you think about caps? In contrast hockey and baseball or whatever. Do you like them?
I do. It's easy for me to say. I mean, really
Not
for
our money,
a
right?
fan, yeah. For a fan, they're a fan of the cap if they're in a small market, and if they're in New York, they hate it, right? Or if they're in Philadelphia, in the Phillies case, they hate it.
Unless you're a Yankee fan.
And I hear people say this about the Flyers all the time, that Comcast isn't willing to spend the money. The Flyers are right up against the cap. It's not a matter of how much, it's how you spend your money. You have to be smart with it.
Yep.
And I like that about caps. Now, hockey has a hard cap. Football has a hard cap, but you can cut players, so that's not quite as punitive.
Hockey's the hardest, I think.
Yeah, and basketball is a hard cap, but there's so many different ways you can get around it with the the deals and so forth. Yeah, so it's the hardest of hard caps, and it is. I think it tests management. So I like it. I think hockey, when it comes to the playoffs, and maybe this is just more the game itself than the financial system, but is the one where you just never know who's going to go on a run, whereas most of the other sports, you have an idea. I think in baseball now, baseball is a sport made to be judged over long periods of time. And we're now to the point now where so many teams make the playoffs in baseball that you can be as bad as the Phillies were last year for the first month and a half and still go to the World Series.
But
so
the different part about baseball, JJ, and it really is way different than every other sport, it's a different metric, a different dynamic in the regular season.
No doubt.
You say, give me 5 starters in the regular season. The Braves, 14 division titles in a row, 1 World Series.
Yeah.
You can't say yes or no. It's not a fact thing. It's an opinion thing. But give me 3 good starters in the postseason. You saw the value of how the Phillies were built in the postseason last year. How are they built this season, in your opinion?
I think they can only be considered better. I do think maybe they could have added one more starting pitcher instead of another offensive player, but I love the offensive player they got. He's one of my favorite players. So I think the lineup looks great, but the lineup last year before the season started looked great too, and then wasn't great for a while.
Yep.
I mean, Nick Castellanos, you'd think was going to be better than he was. You just never know. I mean, it's possible Schwarber is this year's Castellanos. They're similar in terms of the way they approach things.
Look at Travis Konechny, one year to the other.
So, I mean, it looks good on paper. They've really addressed the bullpen, I think, which was a key for the season part of it, and the playoffs. But really, I think they got by with their bullpen last year, and I think this year it could be actually closer to a team's strength. But as you have talked about, maybe one starter shy for the regular season.
Yep.
For the playoffs, if Wheeler and Nola, are healthy, and Rangers still solid, they're good for the playoffs.
All right, we will see. One thing I wanted to get to before we finish, a lot of people say what's the hardest sport to do play-by-play of. My personal opinion, I've done all of them except hockey, is that hockey is by far the hardest. You're up a million miles in the sky. The action is constant. You got to see the puck, the uniforms. Most of the players are white. They wear helmets. Scott Lawton should wear a C, wears an A. But, JJ, what is the biggest challenge? Do you agree with me to begin with that hockey is the hardest sport to do play-by-play with? Never mind the dynamic with your color man. And what's the biggest challenge for you?
I think that it depends on what you're talking about, Paul. It might be the hardest mechanically to do, talking fast, as you say, seeing everything. We did a game in Winnipeg the other night. The sleeves you couldn't read them.
Right, no numbers on the back, on the front of a hockey player, just the back.
Right, and so they're on the back. People will say, well, why don't you read the back? Well, that's good once they're past you, but they're not going to turn their back to you so you can see as they're going down the ice. So it's a tough game when you can't see the sleeve numbers. So mechanically, maybe it's the most challenging, but mentally, baseball was way tougher because baseball,
you gotta tell stories.
Yeah, and there's so much. Baseball is a game where I like to say nothing's happening even though a ton's happening. Because there's so much planning going on. The whole game of baseball is about what is about to happen. It's almost like chess in that way. Whereas hockey, it's about what's happening now. And players who train for hockey practice. They need muscle memory. They can't be thinking out on the ice. It has to be muscle memory. Baseball is the exact opposite. Yeah, they need to practice and obviously be good at their craft. But it's all about what's going to happen with the next pitch. As a second baseman, do I cheat this way or that way depending on what pitch is being thrown? Who's covering second base? Right fielder, outfielders, where do I situate myself? Pitcher, catcher, what pitch is coming up? And the manager, should I get somebody ready to play? There's so many things going on, and you have to be on top of that as an announcer. And so when I would fill in for Scott, who, by the way, is the best in the business,
He's
in my
great.
opinion.
Absolutely great. Scott Fransky.
Yeah, Scott Fransky. He'd gone a couple of brief vacations. I'd get to do like
and
2-3
by the way,
games.
we got 1 minute left here, real quick.
Let me
it's
just
hard
finish
to follow a legend. Scott Fransky following Harry Callis, it worked.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
there were. It's hard with the Phillies because they had so many announcers.
Yep.
Because T-Mac kind of followed Harry too, but and they both done a great job. But really quickly, he would take one off. I do all 9 innings. I do pre-post and 9 innings. I was exhausted by the end of that. Hockey, I'm ready to do another game. So mentally, baseball tougher. Physically, maybe hockey tougher.
All right, that'll be the last word tonight. We had a lot of fun with Jim Jackson, who can talk about anything. Love him here. Great play-by-play announcer of the Flyers. Best of luck the rest of the season, JJ. Hopefully they perform a miracle, make the playoffs, make a deal, get Connor Bedard next year, win the Cup.
Make the playoffs and get Connor Bedard. That would be a trick. Yeah.
There we are. All right. We thank Jim Jackson for being our guest. We thank Chris Ermer for producing. and Stephen Lawler back at the station for Flipping the Knobs. Thank you so much. We'll be back with another guest next week right here at Chickies and Pete's on the Boulevard. This has been the Independence Blue Cross on the ice from Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard. See you next week. Go Eagles in the Super Bowl. Come back strong, Flyers. Good night, everybody.
You've been listening to On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Tonight's show is an exclusive presentation of 1490 WBCB and heard around the world at WBCB1490.com.